Hey guys, so today I'm going to talk to you about the nature of the sixth function in the Myers-Briggs. And what I'm going to tell you is that the sixth function is actually very strong. This is a concept that comes from socionics. So if it's very strong, what in the world is it doing down in the sixth position? Well, this order in the Myers-Briggs is created by Dr. Beebe. And what many people falsely assume is that he's ordering these functions by their strength. But this is not true. He's ordering them for another reason. He's ordering them for the role they play in the psyche. But socionics tells you which functions are very strong, which are weak, and which are very weak. So I'm going to tell you why not only is your dominant function very strong, as you know, your sixth function is actually very strong as well. So I'm going to write about this and place it down below in the description. But to illustrate this concept, this is if you want to see it in more detail. But to illustrate this concept, I'm going to talk about how all 16 types play out their sixth function. And this may not be intuitive at first because the sixth function is actually an unconscious function. So people don't realize the extent that they're expressing it until it's specifically pointed out to them. So I'm going to do that for you. So let's start with extroverted sensing, which is the sixth function of ESTJs and ESFJs. Extroverted sensing makes these two types very proactive and high energy people who do. They're doers. They just take the plunge into action. And you may think that this is coming from something else. This must be coming from the ESTJ's first function, which is extroverted thinking. But this is not true. Extroverted thinking is actually a steady energy. It's procedural. It goes from A to B to C to D. Extroverted sensing, as I said, just takes the plunge. And you see that with ESTJs. You may think this comes from introverted sensing, but that's not true. Introverted sensing is about soothing and relaxing sensations. A good argument is that look at ESFJs. ESFJs, their first two functions is extroverted feeling and introverted sensing. What do these two functions have anything to do with aggression? Nothing. Extroverted feeling is about harmony. Introverted sensing is about soothing and relaxing sensations. So why do you see this aggression coming from ESFJs? That's from their extroverted sensing. So another thing to point out is that the sixth function it's more noticeable, at least to the type themselves especially, when it's expressed in its negative form. So when these two types are upset, they could pretty much lift the door from its hinges. But we also see how it's positively expressed day to day in these two types. We admire ESTJs and ESFJs for their proactiveness. So let's move on to extroverted feeling, which is a sixth function of the ENFP and ESFP. These types effortlessly create a positive and festive environment. They create a very festive environment indeed. And they're actually very adept at manipulating the moods of people when they and the thing is that their extrovert feeling actually gets in the way of their introvert feeling. So ENFPs and ESFPs value introvert feeling. However, their extrovert feeling is actually very strong. So you could see like a tug of war between these two functions because their extrovert feeling is calling them out to create harmony, but their introvert feeling is calling them out to have these individual sentiments about things. So you can see that tug of war in them. And the nature of the sixth function is actually that it's effortless. So you can see how effortlessly they do this. Whereas when you look at like ESFJs and ENFJs, they have extrovert feeling as a very strong function, but also a valued one. And since it's valued, they're very particular about it. They're very consciously particular about it. So it may kind of rub people the wrong way. But for ENFPs and ESFPs, they do it effortlessly. So it's easy for them to be liked. And another thing is that another way to express is that ENFPs and ESFPs they could be very reactive. So this is when it comes in a negative state, as I mentioned. They could be, when they're in a negative state, they could be very dramatic. But this also expresses itself in positive ways in that they're also very good at theater. So let's go on to extrovert intuition. ENTJs and ENFJs have that as their sixth function. If you notice them, actually they get carried away with a lot of zany ideas. They have all these ideas and their minds are actually very scattered. And you can tell that they value introvert intuition and they really want to focus on this vision, but they just have all these ideas and rumbling around. And I think the reason why it could be so strong is that it's because of the polar function. So the polar function is the weakest and most unvalued function, and for ENFJs and ENFJs and ENTJs, that is introvert sensing. So introvert sensing is able to, as I said, it's very relaxing. And these two types have trouble relaxing because of all these scattered thoughts coming from their extrovert intuition. They have trouble sticking to something because of the weak introvert sensing, and they're all over the place extrovert intuition. So let's go on to extrovert thinking in the ENTP and ESTP. So I have an ENTP friend, and I told him that his extrovert thinking is actually very strong, and he's like, really? But then, throughout the day, he started to realize how very strong it is. But usually after the fact, he knows how to get from place to place efficiently, how to organize things pragmatically. They have ENTPs and ESTPs have very strong business logic. They really know how to get down to business, and that is actually extrovert thinking. But you can tell they value introvert thinking. They value that very situational logic kind of way of thinking. So let's go on to introvert thinking, the sixth function of the INTJ and ISTJ. So for these two types, when you look into their minds, they're very elaborately intricate and precise. So it's as if they have this very intricate structure in their head. But you tell that they value extrovert thinking. They want to just be able to implement things A to B to C to D. But their thinking is actually like an INTP and ISTP in the level of structure. And when you hear them talk, you could notice this. So let's go on to INFPs and INTPs. Because our sixth function is introvert intuition. So how does this come off? One thing is that INTPs and INFPs, like myself, we're actually very prudent and far-sighted. And I could kind of see where my life could be headed, but convergently. It's not like every single objective possibility like extrovert intuition. However, I value extrovert intuition. So like with INTPs and INFPs, we could see, for other people and ourselves, where their lives could be headed and where they can make their most use of their potential. So the thing is about the sixth function is that it's not valued. So that comes off as not being very particular about it. So like INFJs and INTJs, they're particular about their introvert intuition. They want people to take their advice. But we could see where things are headed, but we don't expect others to take the advice, and we don't expect ourselves to take our own advice, even though we could see the consequences. So that actually could cause issues. So we prefer experimenting with things with extrovert intuition and seeing how all these different possibilities could pan out, even though we could see how things could likely pan out. Another way it comes off is that INFPs and INTPs could actually come off as quite wise and knowing, but we don't want to, I guess, in a way, because we rather be open to the different options. So let's go on to, okay, another thing I want to point out is the reason, as I mentioned before, it could be very strong because of the polar function. Our polar function is extrovert sensing. So it's very weak. It could be hard for us to take action. So that's why introvert intuition can be so powerful, because it's not as well balanced with extrovert sensing. So okay, so let's move on to introvert feeling. That's the sixth function of INFJs and also ISFJs as well. So this comes off as a very strong sense of social justice, but it's felt very viscerally. So you can tell when you talk with INFJs and ISFJs is that they're very vulnerable people, especially when it comes to social injustice. Very pains them very deeply. And the thing is, as an INFP, I have introvert feeling as a dominant function, so it's conscious. So I could manage it to an extent so I don't feel as much pain. But you can see them really take, their personal sentiments. It really sinks in deep into them, INFJs and ISFJs. So that's, and I notice when they talk, they prefer FE, but they talk with a lot of FI. They talk about a lot of their FI stuff. But they try to lighten it up and go into their FE state where the mood is lighter. But you could see the FI being expressed a lot. So, and I think they're prone to notice it more in the negative state, so they view it as negative, but actually people can see how positive it is. These are people of great personal conviction, great sensitivities to social injustice, for example. So, last but not least, the sixth function of ISFJs, ISFPs, and ISTPs is introvert sensing. It comes off as this effortless ability to create a tranquil and soothing environment. So when I lived with my former ISTP roommate, he's able to do this very well, just living at his home, not just how the house is like, but also just the way he acts. I have introvert sensing as my tertiary, so that's something I seek. And I find it's just very calming to be in that kind of environment that he created. But it's effortless, and they've same thing with my ISFP friend. He also, like, I just go into his room, it just feels relaxing. That comes from introvert sensing, not extrovert sensing. Extrovert sensing is an aggressive, go-getter kind of energy, and that you can tell that's what they consciously desire. So I'm gonna have I'm writing an article about this, and I'm posting it down below in the description about all of this more in depth. So if you want to know about all this more in depth, just look below. And that's how all 16 types express the sixth function in a very powerful way. Thank you.